WNBA are not going to be happy with this. That's all I'm going to say. They are absolutely positively not going to be happy with this right here. If you guys don't know, obviously, Caitlin Clark is what you call it. She is in the she's going to be in the WNBA as part of a now the NBC, the executive producer for NBC Sports has basically said, yeah, there's no more relevant players. And it's never going to stop. Caitlin Clark could win 10 rings and they're still going to complain about her not winning in high school. Like, Caitlin Clark is, the most relevant person in basketball. No, that's racist. And I do think that the likelihood of Caitlin Clark, if the WNBA season doesn't happen.
Look closely at her body language. The pause, the tight smile, the brief glance away. People keep calling it excitement, but it doesn't read that way. It reads like irritation. Not loud, not dramatic, controlled. Because in that moment, a line was crossed that the WNBA has spent years pretending doesn't exist. This wasn't a harmless comparison or an awkward compliment. It was a hierarchy statement. It subtly placed Caitlin Clark into a smaller box than her impact deserves, and she knew it instantly. You could see the calculation happen in real time. Stay professional, don't react, don't derail the moment. That restraint is exactly why the reaction mattered. If she had laughed it off, it would have disappeared. Instead, the pause told the truth. That split second revealed the tension women's basketball still lives with. Even when the numbers, influence, and cultural pull are undeniable, there's still an instinct to frame greatness downward. Clark's expression wasn't about ego. It was about recognition. She understood that the comparison wasn't just about her. It reflected how the sport itself is still being filtered through outdated lenses. And for once, the camera caught the discomfort before the smile could cover it.
Everyone has to be equal. And this is what NBC have said. There is no more iconic figure in basketball, in women's game right now, or the game in general, about Caitlin Clark. In the game in general. That's all I gotta say is that
when an NBC decision-maker frames Caitlin Clark as the most iconic figure in basketball, full stop, it does two things at once. It elevates her into a tier the sport almost never assigns in real time. And it quietly tells the audience that the strongest gravitational force in the game is coming from the league that's usually treated like an afterthought. That's why the reaction matters. NBC isn't a random podcast chasing clicks. It's a major broadcast partner. It speaks in incentives, positioning, and carefully chosen language. It avoids absolutes. So when NBC uses one, it's intentional. It's a flag in the ground. They're saying, this is the figure who moves audiences, sells broadcasts, and pulls casual fans into the sport. And that's where the discomfort begins. Because the WNBA wants Caitlin Clark to be a star within the system. Not a star who makes the system feel smaller by comparison. The league wants growth to look collective, not concentrated. It wants every team, every market, every veteran, every storyline sharing the spotlight, so the structure feels stable without any single person holding up the roof. Clark challenges that balance, not by what she says, but by what the market keeps proving. And when a broadcaster as careful as NBC acknowledges that reality out loud, even indirectly, it exposes a tension the league would rather keep invisible.
Thomas was the reason why people are watching. And by the way, it's not people are like, oh, it was the finals about Liz Thomas. No. They literally said it wasn't just the playoffs, but our regular season broke records as fans went to watch Alyssa Thomas. Like, that is a statement. That is a statement the WNBA had put out. I have to say, that is a statement that they had put out to say that fans came to watch Alyssa Thomas instead of Caitlin Clark or Angel Reese, even if he wants.
The outside world doesn't care about internal balance or league politics. It follows gravity. It follows the magnet. So when NBC publicly crowns Caitlin Clark during an NBA-facing announcement, this isn't just promotion. It's a power move. It reopens the conversation around her on terms the WNBA doesn't fully control. That's the tension. NBC isn't asking permission. By elevating Clark in that moment, they're signaling to casual fans, advertisers, and broadcasters where the real pull in basketball currently lives. The league can try to manage narratives internally, But once a major broadcast partner makes that kind of declaration, the conversation escapes the system. At that point, Caitlin Clark isn't just a star within the WNBA structure. She's a force shaping how the entire sport is discussed from the outside looking in.
Problematic in the league, but now the NBC, the executive producer for NBC Sports, has basically said, yeah, there's no more relevant player, not only in the women's game. And this should be the biggest duh for the WNBA and the biggest W, that they have basically just said that a player in their league is now, in fact, the most iconic figure in basketball. This is on an NBA post.
Once that shift happens, everything is viewed differently. Every quote carries extra weight, and every reaction feels revealing. The WNBA spent much of 2024 trying to avoid the idea that one player was driving the league's momentum. Whenever attention narrowed, the messaging widened, and whenever the numbers pointed clearly in one direction, the framing tried to spread credit across the entire ecosystem.
But at the end of the day, it's what you call it. It's an obvious statement, but they're not going to be happy. You just know it. Like, people are not going to be happy, basically, with, instead of where people should be happy being like, oh my God, people are actually saying.
You could see the strategy in how the league spoke after the postseason. Instead of leaning into the obvious storyline, the messaging elevated other names and broader explanations, as if insisting that attendance jumps and attention surges were about the league as a whole, not the phenomenon at the center of it. The subtext was simple. Don't let this become a one-person economy. That's why NBC's comment is such a problem for the league. NBC isn't chasing a viral clip. It's a broadcast partner with money on the line, research behind its words, and every reason to be careful. When a network like that makes a blunt declaration on an NBA-facing platform, it isn't fandom, it's positioning. It's a signal to advertisers and sponsors about where attention actually lives. Networks don't talk this way without data to back it up. They have the ratings splits, minute-by-minute trends, streaming carryover, and engagement numbers that answer one question clearly. Who makes people show up? So when NBC frames Caitlin Clark as the most relevant figure in professional basketball, it's not provocation. It's a business statement. And that's where the collision happens. Once a partner says it out loud, the league can't take it back. In most sports, this would be a victory lap, amplified, packaged, and pushed everywhere. But the WNBA has treated Clark's star power as something to manage, not crown. Not because it doesn't help, but because the league wants to control how it helps.
And it's never going to stop. Caitlin Clark could win 10 rings and they're still going to complain about her not winning in high school. Like, I just mean it where it's like, these people, none of this is relevant to anything. Like, it is funny in terms of the relevancy. Like, the players have been offered amounts of money that they dreamed of getting. And are calling it slaps in the face. They're getting the coverage that they've always wanted to get.
They want the upside without the optics of dependence. The attention without the admission that the league's momentum is anchored to one name. That tension sits under everything. The WNBA has long promoted a culture of parity, shared respect, and collective recognition. The message is that the product is the product, not a personality. That makes sense in a locker room. As a brand strategy, it's risky. Fans don't fall in love with balance sheets or philosophies. They follow stories, rivalries, and faces. Stars are how casual audiences learn a league. Networks understand that. Sponsors understand it too. They're not buying balance. They're buying reach, recognition, and cultural presence. So when NBC uses top-of-the-mountain language, it isn't disrespecting the league. It's doing what broadcasters do, identifying the strongest marketing engine and putting it front and center. The league's discomfort isn't about whether Caitlin Clark is a star. It's about what happens once everyone agrees she's the star. Because once that reality settles in, every decision gets viewed through that lens. Scheduling, TV windows, ad campaigns, quotes. The illusion of evenly distributed attention disappears. That's the collision point. NBC is speaking the language of business. The WNBA is trying to speak the language of principle. The Sheryl Swoop situation shows this clearly. It was never just about a misquote. It was about how quickly the focus shifted away from substance and toward protecting posture. A report suggested Swoops framed Katie Lou Samuelson as more important than Caitlin Clark. She later clarified that she meant equally important. But by then, the moment had already revealed the larger anxiety underneath.
We're better without Caitlin Clark is one that was used by commentators. Like, to be fair, at least no one's gone full Cheryl Swoops. The fact Elle Duncan apologizing to Cheryl Swoops is still one of the craziest things. So basically, Elle Duncan said that Cheryl Swoops said Katie Lou Samuelson was more important to the Fever than Caitlin Clark. And that's what Elle Duncan...
The reporter apologized for the wording. And what should have followed was a simple question. How does anyone land on equal in the first place? But that isn't where the energy went. The focus shifted to defending Cheryl Swoops, defending her intent, defending the principle behind the take, and framing the backlash as irrational. The difference between more and equal became the headline, while the idea underneath went mostly untouched. That reaction says a lot about the environment. Arguing that Caitlin Clark and Katie Lou Samuelson carried equal value for Indiana isn't a minor disagreement. It's a distortion of what was happening on the court. Samuelson had a limited role and limited production. Caitlin Clark was driving the offense, creating shots for others, generating points, and carrying a workload that fundamentally reshaped the team's identity.
Actually, in fact, they're at fault, and that, Cheryl Swoops didn't say, basically Cheryl Swoops can do no wrong when she slightly misquoted. She was a whole apology and then went to bat for Cheryl Swoops when the sentiment of why the Cheryl Swoops statement was crazy, it was true. That she was saying nonsense shit about Caitlin Clark.
Those are not comparable responsibilities. Yet in this media ecosystem, pushing back on equal was treated like the real offense. Acknowledging the obvious became the crime, not the claim itself. That's the pattern. The league's discourse has been so committed to avoiding a single-star narrative that it rewards framing over facts, protecting the idea of balance even when the numbers scream that one player is the engine. Once you see that, NBC's statement lands differently. They simply said the quiet part out loud, and the reaction was defensive, not because it was wrong, but because it threatened the preferred storyline, that the league rises as a collective. NBC said one person is pulling the sport into new rooms. That's why people reacted. NBC didn't just praise Caitlin Clark. They challenged the unspoken rules about how you're allowed to talk about her. And now it intersects with reality. The labor situation is real. The old deal expired October 31st, 2025. Early 2026, still no new agreement. Whispers circulate. Lockout. If negotiations drag, the next season, slated to start May 8th, could be delayed or frozen. For most players, that means piecing together income overseas and hoping the spotlight returns. For Caitlin Clark, the risk is different. Her value isn't just points or assists. It's being live in American arenas, primetime windows, and the mainstream conversation. Pause that. And you don't just pause a season, you pause momentum.
I actually don't know what's going to happen if the WNBA season doesn't happen. I mean that. I don't know what they're going to do. I really don't know what they're going to do, because if the W season doesn't happen...
Momentum is the most fragile currency in sports. Overseas leagues have long featured elite talent, but most casual American fans still don't follow week to week. The time zones are brutal, access is inconsistent, and the cultural conversation doesn't travel cleanly. The player can be great, but the moment gets quieter. That's why NBC's move makes sense. They're not just celebrating Caitlin Clark. They're hedging against uncertainty. If the WNBA season falters, NBC still has her on air, breaking down games, staying visible, keeping the audience engaged. She's no temporary guest star. She's a pillar of their basketball identity. That executive statement wasn't just praise, it was insurance. But it also exposes the tension beneath it. NBC sees her as an individual asset, perhaps more clearly than the league does. The controversy isn't the recognition, it's the discomfort. The league wants to manage her stardom, fearing that acknowledging a singular gravity diminishes everyone else. But that's not how sports brands are built. Singular stars define eras, Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, LeBron James, Steph Curry. They drove attention and lifted the entire league. The NFL works the same way. Patrick Mahomes is everywhere because attention moves money. The lesson is clear. Letting one superstar shine does not shrink the ecosystem. It grows it. That is the reality the WNBA is wrestling with. They have a player a major broadcast partner is willing to center as the face of the entire sport. And instead of leaning into it, they keep trying to dilute it. This is the kind of star power leagues spend decades hoping for. Yet instead of building an era around it, the WNBA hesitates, trying to acknowledge reality without upsetting anyone. That approach may sound noble, but it doesn't hold cultural moments. Moments don't wait for perfect messaging. You cannot insist the spotlight be evenly distributed while also knowing it's what brings new fans through the door. At some point, you have to choose a primary strategy, and the market will decide for you. NBC's statement carries extra weight because of where it was made. It wasn't framed as the biggest thing in the WNBA. It was on an NBA platform, in NBA coverage, putting Caitlin Clark mentally alongside LeBron James, Stephen Curry, and Giannis Antetokounmpo, and signaling she is currently the player pulling the strongest attention. This is not a sympathy gesture. It's a cold business assessment. Who moves viewers, drives engagement, and serves as a programming tentpole. The WNBA should be celebrating this loudly, consistently, and strategically. They should amplify it, coordinate with NBC, and squeeze every ounce of value from this window. More national visibility, mainstream crossover, consistent storytelling, and moments that make casual fans feel they're missing out. Instead, the instinct often feels cautious, focused on internal balance and fear of dependence on one player. But while the league threads that needle, the window won't stay open forever. Casual attention is fleeting, and right now, people are watching. They're listening right now. They're sampling the product. And that brings the league to a question it can no longer avoid. Are you going to build around the star you have, or keep pretending the moment belongs to everyone equally while the moment quietly moves on? Here's the uncomfortable choice. Does the league prioritize moral consistency about equality or winning the attention economy? Right now, it acts like those goals conflict, and it's choosing the safer path, even at the cost of momentum. NBC just handed them a rare gift. This isn't a casual compliment. On an NBA-facing platform, a mainstream partner declared that the biggest draw in basketball right now is a WNBA player. A growth-minded league would respond simply. Appreciate it, amplify it, build on it. Not retreat, not hedge with reminders that everyone deserves recognition, not scramble to soften the edges so no one feels slighted. You can respect the rest of the league while still following what the market is telling you. Both are true, but only one builds a durable business model. Long-term stability doesn't come from insisting every player is perceived the same. It comes from using a transcendent figure as an entry point, then expanding fan attention once they're inside the arena. That's how a moment becomes a movement. So here's the question. Is NBC right to label Caitlin Clark the most iconic figure in basketball right now, based on cultural impact, attention, and mainstream pull? Or does that framing disrespect NBA stars and minimize other WNBA players who've been building the league for years? The bigger question, should the WNBA lean into a once-in-a-generation star as a strategic advantage, or cling to an equality-first posture even if it caps the league ceiling? This isn't about whether Caitlin Clark is great. Everyone sees that. It's about whether the WNBA is willing to accept what the marketplace has already confirmed. NBC didn't create the moment. They just announced it publicly in T.